Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Dr. Denisha Keating Show. Super excited for you guys to be here. We are doing a kitchen table talk conversation on kinship care and the complexities of kinship care and taking somebody in. But remember, one of the rules, well, three of the rules is that we can't yell, scream, or talk over each other. We're actually coming to the conversation to understand and ask questions. And with a topic like this, it can get emotional. So what we're doing is inviting you as the fly on the wall to listen in and to hear how we would navigate a conversation of this level. And a lot of people know the foster care system is a mess, and it is really hard just to say the system is a mess and then we walk away from it. It actually impacts and affects real life people, including children and the families and those who are taking care of them. So Ashley, you are doing kinship care. So tell me a little bit about what your journey looks like and we will dig in.
Uh, we are doing what they call fictive kin. So we
Okay.
don't have a biological relationship to our kinship, but we do have a relationship that was established. Um, we have known our fictive kin since before he was born. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been a new endeavor. All of my kids are almost at that teenage age and up.
Mm.
So getting someone that was quite younger than that has been
Mm.
challenging, but a good challenge. So
Okay. So, what has it been like to get access to the resources? What resources are available that you know of right now? Because it's very different than foster care.
yes. So technically we are in through foster care, so we're through um foster care as fictive kin.
Mm-hmm.
So resources have been I can't say that we've had a lot of negative where I haven't been able to, but I have a medical background. We do some ministry for people, so I have a lot of things that I was aware of due to my background that helped facilitate some of those resources.
Okay. So, with foster care, it is through foster care, but what do some of those resources look like that might be different for kinship care versus foster care from your experience?
Hmm. From my experience, we've really not had a lot that I feel like we're lacking. My main concern was being able to find childcare, because like I said, we haven't done that in a really long time, and that was pretty
Yeah.
accessible for us. Um, there's not a lot in my area as far as support, as far as like
Mm.
for people doing that kinship. There's not a lot of resources that you go to this one place and it's all there and you can get all your answers. It's a lot of digging, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
trying to find people that understand where you are because I think kinship care is very different than someone that sets out to be a foster parent.
Mm-hmm. What makes it, what in your perspective, what makes it different though?
And my perspective is you have a lot of levels there. So when you have a relationship with a family, um, it's a little harder with boundaries. You know, you have to really hold those tight for whatever the case may look like. And I find that challenging because you have such a history.
Mm. So versus foster parents, they really met the family when the kid came into their home versus kinship, you know you had a friendship with this family beforehand. So how does that change the dynamic when you had to go from friend to protector?
It's changed a lot. There's a lot of
Mm.
anger involved. I think it's really hard to go from we can talk about everything and open lines of communication to there are things that have to be done first. You know, there are things that are
Mm.
required that I'm covered by what, you know, the court system has asked of you, what I'm required to do um,
Yeah.
in that context. And that is very hard. That's
Yeah.
probably the hardest thing I think for me has been is figuring out what this road looks like.
It's so I did guardianship of my siblings. And, one of the hardest things that I have had to explain to people is that they didn't just lose their parents, I lost mine too. But then you also lose like you said, the relationship with other people that were in relationship with those children as well. So like my aunts and uncles, those relationships kind of had to go at a distance because it was like, okay, I can't really say that. I can't be as open to my family about what we're going through because it involves my family. When, you know, you don't want to paint them in a bad light, you don't want to say something that would get around to the rest of the family. But this is harder because I wouldn't say harder. It's probably on the same level of hard because this was your friend. And this was someone that, like you said, you could have those hard conversations with and just kind of be open and hear that and express that. And now you're being more reserved. That, like, it's a heartbreak that you experienced.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
may I ask, and you could totally say, like, no, were you really close to this person too and now, like, not anymore? Like, what did that look like?
It definitely put a strain. It
Mm,
definitely created a divide. And I think that, we have a lack of resources in that department all across the board, in my opinion, where there's not
mm-hmm.
a lot of support for that foster family or that kinship care and fill in the gap between those biological parents either when that's safe.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not always the case, but when it's safe, making it feel like the best way I describe it is a co-parent relationship instead of, oh,
Yeah.
you're against me or you want this from me or you want to hurt me, because that's not
Yeah.
the case at all.
Well, and I do think, like, I feel like that's definitely something that is felt on all sides. I've talked to a lot of different bio families and foster parents where it's like, I feel like sometimes I have to be the mitigator to this situation. And it's so wildly different when it's like you have a friendship beforehand and it's like, I'm not doing this to hurt you, but you can't just stop by whenever you want to. You have to, like, before it was like you could kind of,
Yeah.
but it feels like I think what's so different about this was that as before, if I had said no, like, no, I'm so sorry, tonight's not going to work. Beforehand, it was like, oh, whatever, with that bio parent. But then now that I have their kids, that no was like, you're against me, you don't care for me, you're doing harm against me. And it's like, no, I've said no before, but now that the kids are in my care, you see, it might be seen as different, which is really, really hard.
Yes.
How has that adjustment, like, have you been able to find other people who relate to that same emotion on the kinship care side?
I have what they call a peer support specialist that has done
Mm-hmm.
kinship care.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so she's been great at just giving me a place to feel safe that I could like
Mm,
express, because I think it's so important that we understand that there are so many emotions that come with it. It's not, cut
yeah,
and dry. We go
right,
through all the things and you want people to succeed and you want to do
right.
so just being able to have someone that's kind of been down a similar road and just to
Mm-hmm.
listen to me cry or whatever has been what
Yeah,
I find to be really important.
yeah. Especially because it's like who you would have cried to before is your friend, but you can't cry to your friend about your friend.
Right. And
Like,
and
it
people
sounds
that
silly,
haven't
but
done
it's
the
true.
yeah, but people that haven't done foster care or kinship, it's a little bit more simple to them. It's really simple. Like, they're like, oh, well, I would just be like, oh, you made a mistake, so you're awful. That's not how this is. People struggle with different
Yeah.
hardships in life, and not everybody that's had an investigation or had their kids removed is, awful. They've made some bad choices.
Yeah. A big misconception for foster care or for someone getting their child removed is they automatically assume that it's all because of physical abuse or drug use. And that's not always the case. One of the things that, when I looked it up, they said like 75% of cases are due to neglect. Neglect could mean something like the parent is struggling with depression and the house wasn't clean to the standards of what the county would say is good. Not having babysitting and then having to leave the child at home so that they could go to work. Sometimes it is because of physical abuse, but it is not always the same. Like, every case is so different, even if it is multifaceted the same way, it's all different things causing those particular things. So it is really hard to just be like, well, yeah, they're just horrible people, they should never get their kids back. It's like, no, no. Like, there are situations, yes, that's true, but most of the situations are not like that. And that was really eye-opening to me because I didn't know that kids were being taken for things like staying at home and babysitting each other. It was just different. It was a different understanding once I went through the system as the adult and started hearing the stories of why kids were taken away.
Yeah, and we, like I said, I've done some ministry work and we've ministered to a lot of people in recovery. And so
Mm.
being able to see other people go through this process and
Mm-hmm.
watching what that can look like and how jaded that can be for people that have never experienced that, people that have never
100%.
sat on that side and they either struggle themselves or watch someone they love deeply struggle. It's
Right.
like you can't sit in those shoes until you've walked a mile in them. And I think that's
Yes.
important. I think
Yes.
that, that's why it's so important to talk about it. So we discuss it so that people understand those stories because people can't know what they don't know. And just
Mm-hmm.
like people that get to these decisions sometimes, some of those are generational. Some of those are,
Yes.
that's all I've known. And though
Mm-hmm.
it's not okay, like you can't expect somebody to do different until they're taught different.
Right. And then the hardest part for me, I think, was um it was an act of choice and the addiction looked different than drugs or alcohol. And that was really shocking for people to see is that they're like, you can't get addicted to soda, you can't get addicted to food or being on the computer all day. And it's like studies have actually shown that you can. And it what it does is it creates neglect of like, one of the biggest issues was it wasn't I always thought it was a mismanagement of money, but it was a impulse spending where it was like to see fulfillment, and it was an addiction to swipe the card. But
Yeah,
that was because my parents grew up in scarcity, and so when they would get, they didn't know how to manage. And
right.
so it was eye opening, and there was still other things for my case particularly, but it was just like, yeah, like what when you don't know, okay, but then when you do know, why didn't that change? And
Right.
that was kind of shocking to me, was that it was an active choice. Like I received an email from my parents saying like, no, I did these things on purpose because I was trying to make you easier to manage, and so I purposely was trying to make you docile. And I'm like, oh, I gave you way too much credit. Like that was a little too much for you. But on
Absolutely.
the other side, like I started to get very jaded whenever someone was like, my kids got taken away, and I was like, good. And then I started to hear people's stories, and I was like, oh, no two cases are the same. No two cases is the same. And addiction is not the same. Sometimes there's no addiction at all.
Right.
Sometimes it's depression, sometimes it's you know not even that, but just like they're doing the best they can, and they were just like, I just can't do it anymore. And that breaks my heart because I think the biggest misconception I saw was everyone assumes that I see out there is everyone assumes that people who get their kids taken away don't love their kids. But that's not true either. Where we see a lot of them where it's like they're doing the hard work, and it's like I met a mom who had severe postpartum depression, severe, and no one was treating her for that. Like her doctors weren't treating her for that. And she was sharing her story of just like, my kids got taken away when I was in severe depression. Like I couldn't get out of bed. And that was kind of shocking to me because I always had assumed that it was all the same. So when she shared that, I was like, that was really sad that no one came around her to help her
Yeah.
clean her house, to help her make sure she had food on the table, to help make sure she had a babysitter. Like everyone was just like, oh, well, you sink or swim. And it was like, and then she was told that by people like, oh, you're experiencing depression, that then you just don't deserve your kids. And it was like, where's the human kindness? And that woke me up a lot because I was very shocked to hear that. And like you said, like when we're not in that person's shoes, we can't assume what they're feeling or thinking or going through. So how, like you said, you guys served in a capacity. How did that break your heart to start being like, oh, this is different?
Well, my dad struggled when I was a kid. So I
Mm,
had my heart broken from that early on.
mm,
Um, and so that opened my eyes to a lot because I could see that firsthand. I could see like the person. when we're struggling and the person we are when we're not struggling. And it was
Mm,
really hard for me. So, um, because of some of that, it gave me the ability to be really empathetic to people.
yeah.
And so I feel really big. I see and I analyze a whole lot. It's part of
Yeah.
the mechanism that I grew from that. Um, I knew by watching that wasn't who people were when they
Mm,
were ready to not be that person because it's a them choice. It's not,
mm-hmm.
you can't push them into that. You can't cry enough to
Right.
make it better. They have to
Yeah.
want that. And so for me, it was like, what can I do to support someone for whatever moment they need me. So if
Yeah.
that's why we're, in the middle of the program, while we're out of the program, while we're,
Mm-hmm.
struggling it out for 6 months and I come, once every three, like
Mm.
whatever that is, I want to be there to support you for that.
Can I ask a question? And again, you can
Absolutely.
totally be like, nope. When during kinship, have did you see any emotions being kind of like uprooted or hit from your childhood while you were navigating kinship care?
Yes. I think my first couple of months, it was a little,
Mm,
probably a little harsh, a
mm,
little hold you to the fire a little harder because I know what it's like. Okay. So
yeah.
for me is it was really I didn't feel like I was worthy enough to be sober for as a child.
Mm,
Um and so for me, I knew what that could cause someone to feel like when their parent was not involved enough, like they might need them to be in any capacity for whatever reason. And
mm-hmm.
so I think that gave me a little bit of a harder line at first. Um, and in the last couple of months, I've been doing a lot of research,
Mm,
really talking with God about that, and
yeah.
my eyes have been open in the last month or two, where I was just like, that's not it. There's a bigger
Mm,
picture here, and compassion and love is what I need to do, and that's what I'm gonna do to the best degree that I can.
yeah. Well, and it, yeah, yeah, 100%. And it is hard because you did say the thing that I think people need to hear is when it is safe.
Hmm.
That is our hope and our goal of foster care is to reunify with the child with their family
Yes,
when it is safe.
absolutely.
And it is hard because there are a lot of opinions out there of like, well, are you guys going to adopt? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Like, why would you give that person a chance? And you said like, I need to come into this with compassion and love. And it's just so hard to watch so many people who just don't understand say things. And I'm like, stop talking. Just shush, shush your mouth.
Don't say anything.
When I had my siblings, it was really really hard. I did legal guardianship, so I didn't do. I wasn't approved for kinship. They said like I didn't qualify, which is funny because then I found out last year that I did, but they just didn't do it. So a whole mess. But it was I went the legal guardianship route, and people were like, "How selfish of you to step in and do this?" And I'm like, "So am I supposed to just like?" Let them go into foster care again and not potentially not see them because they'll be split up between homes. And it was just I had to get to a point where I was just like, I'm not sharing this information with you because you don't understand it. How can we, if someone is like they wake up tomorrow and they find themselves in kinship or legal guardianship, what would be the biggest advice that you would have wished you heard in the beginning?
It's okay to have an emotion. It's
Mm.
okay to feel all of
Mm-mm.
that. And this is one that I was just reading in Fostering the Family.
Mm.
It's a book that I'm absolutely in love with. And she says,
By
the thing that
Jamie.
yes,
Hey
don't
Jamie. Shout out Jamie. Yep. She's amazing, by the way.
don't get, I couldn't do that. I get too attached. Get attached. Love
Yes.
that baby, that teenager, whatever, because that's what they need. They don't need a home and a meal. I mean, they need those too, but they need
Yeah.
somebody to love them and support that family. So we're saying, hey, listen, I'm not saying we're all going to get it right. I'm not saying that every parent that gets
Mm-hmm.
a case plan is going to succeed in that case plan. But I want to
Yeah.
know. that I did everything I could to facilitate that to the best ability because that's what's
Mm-hmm.
best for that child.
Yes, amen. Amen. And I would what I wish that I was stronger in. I don't know why I'm getting emotional all of a sudden.
It's okay. I feel it too. Don't we're on there together.
We're holding this together. We're not replacing and like I grew up in so I grew up in the abuse as well as my siblings did. And the biggest thing about foster care was just like people were just like, oh, you could just replace them with somebody else. And I had to learn to let the whole be a whole where my parent was not anymore. I spent so much time trying to replace that hole with another person or another thing. And then raising my siblings, people are like, you're not a real parent. And I'm like, ooh,
Mhm.
we're going to fight. The good Lord had to hold me back on that one. But I was the parent in the sense of being the person guiding them through life. It's very different being the sibling of who you're kinshiped over. And it's so hard because it's like, I'm not replacing your parent. Foster care parents, but kinship, guardian, we're not replacing the parent. We're an extension of the parent. And that I wish I had heard early on because it's just so true. Like, it's like, okay, I'm not replacing them, but I'm also just an extension of that community for this person. And I wish that I had had that as a foster youth myself. Is like I had some, it was so sweet because I was in color guard and band and choir, and so their parents became my extensions. You know, my friends' parents became the extensions, and they said like, you're like our kid. Like, we're not replacing your parents, but we are an extension of your community. And when we can see that as the foster parent, the kinship parent, the guardian parent, is that we're an extension of their community. We go all in. We're just like, oh, we can love you, we can pour into you, we can be there even after your case is no longer with us. Like, we could always keep that extension open. But I think too many people look at it as a replacement to the biological family. We should not look at it that way. We should look at, we are an extension of their community. But it has been so hard because when you lose that person that was your friend or your family member because of that kinship placement, there is a level of grief that no, I don't think a lot of people can relate to, because that's been kind of the hardest part for me to be able to relate to foster parents. Is like, they're like, and then I had my family, and I'm like, oh, I lost my entire family unit. Like, I lost both my parents at that point. And like, so it's been this overwhelming grief. So I love that you said, like, feel your emotions, because that was something I'm like, no, push off, push off, push off, push off, that I started working through the last year and a half of like, I'm not replacing my parents. I'm going to let the whole be the whole. But dang, it hurt to lose so many people through this situation that I should have been able to tap into if I was doing the foster care route. And that's been hard. So how do you navigate like that loss of a friend?
I think I've had to reconcile with it that there's some stuff I can't fix or fill that
Yeah.
hole.
Yeah.
And so I just have to know that I've gotten up and done the very best that I can. And sometimes it's
Mm,
gonna hurt, and sometimes I'm gonna ugly cry, and sometimes I'm gonna be
mm,
angry, and that's all okay. You know,
yeah.
I think I heard it the other day. I was really tossing and turning. I've really been struggling with trying to figure out what this road looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I said, you know, I was talking to my friend, and I said, this is going to
Mm,
be really hard, but I have to be
mm,
honest with you because I love you and I love this little one that I'm tending to right now. So it's
mm,
like, no matter what this ends up looking like, because you know, they ask you when you become fictive kin, are you going to adopt? Is that something because they have to be prepared if we get to that point, you know?
yeah.
And those are hard conversations to have because I'm like, I don't want to replace. And someone said the other day, you're not replacing their parent. I don't have to
Mm,
compete for them to love me.
mm.
They can love all of us, and that is okay. But
And
I
we're all
said,
different roles.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I said to her, no matter what this looks like, no matter how this turns out, you are always going to be that little one's mama. And I can't replace it, and I don't want to.
Mm,
So as long as we're safe As long as we're doing what we need to be doing, you'll
Mhm.
always have a place in his life, no matter what this looks like.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to be honest with that. I think we have to be honest with the people in our lives. I think we have to learn to say what we need.
Hmm.
And I think we have to be okay with that. That it's okay to not be okay. It's not okay to stay there.
It's so hard to sit in that because I think I don't know why, like all of a sudden it's like boom. And it's not like I'm not like the emotions I'm feeling is not like, oh my God, I'm so sad. It's just there's this brokenness that you recognize. This is the break my heart for what breaks yours, Lord. That breaks
Absolutely.
me. That it's just like my in a perfect world, we would be able to sit across from this person's parent and say, I want to give you some tough love. Like, I want you to choose the right things. But even in their brokenness, that's the thing I think we miss so much is that we think that they're choosing this just because they hate life or they don't want, and it's like most of the time they chose this route because they felt hopeless, and whatever they're choosing is making them feel alive.
Mhm.
And it's just like we have to sit and have that hard conversation to say like, my job, the reason I'm involved in this is to protect this child,
Yeah,
not to be your best friend.
absolutely.
I would love to have this back, but we have to put that aside. We don't lose it, but we have to put it aside and say like, you have to figure out what's best for you, but my role in this child's life is to protect them right now. And unfortunately, sometimes it's like this, when the relationship has to end for that child, it's for the betterment to keep that child safe, but it doesn't always feel like that's what we're doing.
Right.
We're not trying to save, we're not trying to be the hero. We're trying to commit to, my goal is to be the protector for this kid. And if that person is not safe, that parent is not safe, it's such a heartbreaking thing because it's like you could change this.
Mhm.
But that's a whole thing, they have their own journey they have to go through. And so it's hard to watch when that person is like, I want this instead,
Yeah,
and that is
absolutely.
just like, it's so hard because it's also your friend. So again, like that's what makes it different is like, you're like, I love you so much that I want to slap you because I'm your friend, but I don't have time to be your friend and pick you up while having to do this other thing.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest conversation to have was that like
Mm,
when this became a thing, I was dead face was like, I love you and I will always love you. And I want you to
mm,
succeed. And I want you to do all the things that I know you're capable of doing. But in this journey in our life right now, my number one has to be to take care of this little one. And I have to do
mm,
that at whatever expense of our friendship because
mm.
the little one did not make these choices, did not, um, not due to not like some brokenness of their own, but like didn't make those. So I have to
Yeah.
make sure that they're protected and safe
Mm,
and loved and all the things. And that was hard to do because, you love them and your heart breaks when they're struggling. And you know that like this just added to that struggle.
yeah.
You're adding another layer on top of that struggle and you worry about them. And it's a really fine line to toe,
Yeah.
honestly.
It is the hardest line to toe.
Hmm.
And it's like sometimes the hardest part is, people are like, but isn't that your friend, like, or your parent, like, should they listen to you? And it's like, well, they are going to make the active choice to listen or to not listen, but it's not your job once the child is entered into your home to say, I'm going to be the person who picks you up in the middle of the night and put the child at risk. Like that cannot be the role. So it's like you have to, as a kinship provider or guardian, you have to, and foster parent, there's moments where you have to say like, I cannot be that for you in this season, and hope and pray that people come along to be those people who can support them in that way. But it is so different when it's like, yeah, we had a whole friendship before this and now it's just gone. Because we don't know if that's going to come back, but it's like we can pretty much say like it's forever different and forever, maybe not redeemed, not by like Christ will redeem it, but not like we can't redeem it for them. Like they have to
Absolutely.
want it, like you said. which makes it so hard because it is, you know, frustrating when you're like,
Yeah, and
what
I
you're
think,
doing is impacting more than you.
yeah, and it's really hard, because there's a difference in helping and enabling. You know what I mean? And I think that when you take on that kinship, you have to really figure out where that line is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm helping you succeed, I'm loving you and all the things, but I'm
Yeah.
not enabling you to not step up to the plate either.
Yeah. I think that that's the hard part is as the friend and or the family member, sometimes we're just like, no, it's okay. Like they'll get it together. No, it's okay. Let's not talk about it. And it's like that doesn't help them when we're not
Yeah,
the ones calling it
absolutely.
out. And I think that that's like the hardest thing is that again, it comes back of anything that we say sometimes can be considered like they're just like, no, I don't trust you now. It's like,
Yeah. I
I wish
think
I could just be the friend.
I think other people's voices and not necessarily like family. There are so many people involved when you are
Yeah.
in the middle
Yeah.
of kinship care, foster care, or guardianship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've got workers in and out and stuff like that, and it's never the same. It's
Mm-hmm.
always different, and
Mm-hmm.
they have their own opinions, and sometimes you see those opinions by action, and I'm like,
Right. 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 Right.
man, and it's a really, hard to be like, I can't really respond to that reaction, even though in my friend or my family member's defense, I want to step in and be like, okay, you're looking at this incorrectly. As my
Mm-hmm.
position that I
Mm-hmm.
set as a kinship care or whatever your role is, you kind of have to be like, okay, I can't really defend that right now.
Mm-hmm.
I
It's not
have
your
to step
place
back.
to
Yeah,
at that point because
right.
I think that's the hardest part I had to learn. And I was 24 when I took in my siblings who were all from 12 to 19. So it was definitely difficult, I think, to navigate that and then past trauma that was hit. But it was that thing that I had to learn. It is not my role in this to correct the behavior of the parent. I need to let that the parents team do that for them. That's what their team, her team was for, or his team was for. My role is to be the team player for the kids.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
it's a huge shift when that happens because it's just like I want the best for them, but I can't be like, hey, you did that 10 years ago because that's not helpful. Like it's not ideal to be like, let me bring that up. And it's not what I found was it wasn't even received when I did say like, you've been on this pattern for 10 years. Your team might be new and not know that, but you've been on this
Right.
pattern for 10 years. They needed to do their own digging. And so I needed to sit back and just let it be because they'll discover that. Cause I'm not here to try to sabotage either because
And
that's how it can come across.
yeah, and that's another thing, that I've seen in different aspects, not particularly with this kinship, but watching people go,
Mm-hmm.
through this is that, I've seen some people that have maybe, been involved in a case before, and so therefore they come in at this preconceived notion that, okay, we're not going to get any better. We're not going to do what we need
Yeah.
to be
And
doing.
that,
And I'm like,
yeah.
like I understand, why you have some reserve, but
Yeah.
acting upon that reserve is what's, not
It's not
appropriate.
helping. And
Yeah,
and people are allowed to change and what maybe okay, 10 years ago they made similar behaviors, but my question always has to come back to what is the behavior today? If it's a pattern, we're showing a pattern. But why am I showing the pattern? Why does the
right.
pattern matter in this if they have made strides to change? And then there are some things where it's like it's just when someone is not ready to have their child back, it's very apparent for today. They might be clean for a couple of years and or on the right track for a couple of years and then hit a hiccup. Then to say like I we see the comments all the time when someone's like no, one bad thing to a kid, you should never have your kids again. And it's like no, because not every situation is the same. Like we keep thinking like it's an addiction or abuse, but again it's like what if it was a depressive episode? What if it was a health issue? I know someone who said that they um had their daughter and then had something like happen where it was like their body was like shutting down. And so they put the child, because they didn't have any family, so they put the child in foster care so that the mom could recover. But then it opened up like a spew of case like for a year and a half for her. So she was like, it was just kind of one of those crappy situations to be in, but everyone assumed, like, would tell her, like, oh, you must have been a drug addict or whatever. And she's like, no, I have a medical condition and I don't have family. So it was very, and I was like shocked because I was like, what did you do? And she told me that, and I was like, oh, that's a misjudgment on my part. But then it's like, I think that that's why we need to take every case by case and not assume it's all the same, but not use the past to say, like, you can never be qualified again, because that's not true. People can change. We see it happen all the time. What other advice would you give to someone who's stepping into this arena?
I would get in counseling. It's a lot to bear on your own.
Heck
It's
yeah.
a lot. It's a lot to mentally process. It's a lot trying to figure out where you're going to make all these appointments and show up for all these people
Gosh.
that have to
Yeah.
come by and do all things. I think it's really important that you have somebody where you have a safe space. You can say whatever about whoever
Mm,
and let work through that. So you can prepare yourself, your family, and that child you're taking care of.
yeah. And even after the child, like, say the child returns home, get into counseling, because
Oh
that
yeah.
that was something I put off for a little bit, and I had people to process this stuff with, but it wasn't, it was for a couple years after that I was like, ooh, a lot of this is starting to come up again.
Yeah.
And it just kind of came, it wasn't out of nowhere, I just kept putting it off. So when I got back into it, I was like, dang, like, I didn't realize just how much, like, I had just kind of pushed it off. But you're right, like, we're not meant to carry all of that by ourselves, and it is nice to have a I wouldn't even say it's a safe space, but more of like a closed door space away from everybody, to where you can get it out of your body, so your body and brain can process together without judgment, like a judgment free zone, which is doesn't
Absolutely.
exist in most circles. Because it does change, it changes people's perception of who we're caring for like the parents, and we don't want that. That's why
Right.
I think it's so helpful to have foster parent groups that we have, because we can say, like, this is a frustration for me, and they're not turning around and being like, well, we're going to hate them with you. And it's like, no, 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 they understand it on a deeper level, to say, like, this is just a hard, the situation is what's hard,
Yeah.
not
Absolutely.
all the reflection of who and what and where and all that stuff.
Yes.
So get into counseling. What other advice would you give someone?
Pull your resources, like,
Mm,
I
mm-hmm,
mean, read a book, reading's your thing, do that. If
mm-hmm,
journaling's your thing, do that. I think it's important
mm-hmm,
for you to set some time every day. If it's 15, 20 minutes, I have uh 5 kids of my own, and then this new little one that we have. So
mm-hmm,
I think it's really important to find 15, 20 minutes to breathe
mm-hmm.
and nobody to call my name or need me to do anything, make a sandwich, fix a problem, whatever. It's really important for you to be able to just breathe for a few minutes.
Yeah. And it helps our mental, emotional well being, because I'm seeing a lot of us are just struggling. And a lot of the times it's like we feel like we can't slow down and we can't take a
Mhm.
break and we can't stop, and we need to, like, we have to make that a priority.
Absolutely.
Anything else you'd like to share before we end?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my
This
head.
was really helpful. Thank you. It's kinship is so different. Like, kinship and guardianship is just a little bit different because of the fact that it is someone you know, and it's someone that
And
like, it's a child you're taking in of a friend or a family member.
And like I always say that foster parents have gotten, they made a decision. Okay, so they had this thought or felt called or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So they had this time to like mull over it and be like, oh, okay, that's what I want to do. And then you have time to prepare your children and your spouse and your family.
Yeah.
And when that kinship care and guardianship, it doesn't work out that way necessarily. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, hey, tomorrow there's going to be a new one, surprise.
Mhm. Yeah. It's literally like 24. And most foster parents that I know, that is the situation. There's a few that became foster parents because of the kinship call, and it was you're going to have this child placed with you in 24 hours. Can you take them? And you're like, huh? Like, yeah, sure. And sometimes it's the friend drops them off or the family member drops them off, and it's like, hey, where are you? Where did you go? We haven't seen you. And then it's like, well, I need legal documents to be able to take them to the doctor. I need to put them in, I need to make sure that I can vouch for them at school and things like that. So you're right, it's a 24-hour, like, all of a sudden, and it's wild. It's just a wild journey that you really don't prepare for until you're in it. And then you're not scrounging, but like, what is the word that you're scrambling? I was like, what is that word? Then when you're scrambling, you start to scramble to try to find and pick up the pieces and find the resources and get with people who are around you. So if you are in that, like, reach out to a CASA. I was telling Ashley that before. I was like, make sure you're connected with a CASA, because CASA is, even if they're not going to represent the child in court, they're court advocates for the child. But what they can do is help point you in the direction of what resources could be available for you in your area. There's therapy that you desperately can get into to help just with you and the child as well. And then just get into community. Community is such an important piece of staying, especially when you lose that friend or that family member because of the situation. It is so important to find people who can rally around you and bring you dinner and be that support to where you are able to say, I'm not doing so sweet today. I need a little bit of help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we end?
I think it's important to those people that are supporting those people that are doing kinship, foster, guardianship. I think it's important that you allow them to just talk sometimes. Show up at dinner. That's a big deal. It's a lot
Mow the
sometimes.
lawn, like,
Just little
sometimes
things
that
like
front yard is the last thing to be able to remember to be done. Sometimes I'm like, my grass is overgrown. What?
And if you're bringing me dinner, man, I'm telling you, I don't know whose responsibility decided that I had to pick what we had for dinner every night for the rest of eternity, but it's still like a mental challenge. And some days I don't have the capacity to pick. So
You're like,
by all
what's food?
means, yeah, ask what they need. Ask what they
I
need.
love that's such a good point to make. So please make sure you guys reach out to that family and just say, how can we support you? Even to the bio family. Sometimes that is what makes or breaks them getting to keep their kids, is the lack of community and the lack of support. Some of it is just that they need a couple nights or couple weeks of dinner. And then other times it's that they just need community to surround them and say, hey, it's time to get up and do it differently. So if you guys have questions, please put them in the comments. Ashley, thank you so much for joining with me on this particular topic. This is not a topic that I think a lot of people are covering. We hear a lot about foster care, but we don't really hear about the impacts of kinship and guardianship when we take in family. So if you guys have questions, leave them below and we'll go from there. Have a great day, you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.